Mr. Trutna here. This is Math 2. We are doing Unit 3. This is Worksheet 1, and we're going over the concept of congruent figures. Okay, so remember, the word congruent means the same as, and the symbol for the word congruent is an equal sign with a squiggle above it, and that would mean congruent. So anytime you see this symbol right here, that means that you're being told that two figures, and figures are shapes, are going to be congruent to each other. The word congruent means they're the same as. So the first problem we're going to do is we're going to do number 1. It says each pair of polygons is congruent. Find the measure of the numbered angles. So if you notice in number 1, we want to find the measure of angle 1. We want to know what that is equal to. And we also want to know what the measure of angle 2 is equal to. Okay, and we are told that triangle MLN, so there's M, there's L, there's N, so that triangle there, in that order, is congruent, so it's the same as triangle QPR. Okay, so remember, this right here, this statement right here, is what is known as a congruency statement. And it tells us exactly what angles are congruent to each other in each triangle, and it tells us what sides are congruent to each other. So if you notice, angle 1 is right here, and angle 1 is right at letter L. And if you notice in our congruency statement, L is the second letter, so that means L is going to be congruent to where P is. So P, if you notice, is right here, which is 90 degrees. So that means these two angles are going to correspond. So angle 1 has to be 90 degrees. Okay, angle 2, if you notice, angle 2 is right here, and it's right where N is. So angle 2 is the angle of N. Then if we looked at our congruency statement, N is in the third position of our congruency statement. In the third position of our congruency statement over here is R, and there's R, which is 40 degrees. So that means angle 2 has to be 40 degrees. Okay, so that's all you had to do in number 1. Was you just had to find the measure of the numbered angles. Okay, the next problems we're going to do 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the instructions say use the diagram to the right. So we're going to use this diagram right here. And we're going to complete the congruent statements. Okay, and we are told that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ. So remember, when we're this statement right here is called a congruency statement, and it tells us exactly what angles are equal to each other and what sides. So number 3 says side AB, so here is side AB right here, and it's congruent to what side? Well, if you notice, A and B are the first two letters in my congruency statement, so that means they have to be congruent to side XY. Okay, so number 3, side AB is going to be congruent to side XY. That's the congruent symbol right here. Okay, number 4, side ZY. So ZY is this side right here. I'll put 2 tick marks. Is congruent to what? Well, if you notice, ZY is the third and the second letter in order of this side of the statement. So that means it has to be congruent with side CB. Okay, so number 4 would be CB. All right, number 5, angle BAC. So angle BAC, that is that angle right there. I'll put an arc there. It's congruent to what angle? Okay, so it has to be congruent to an angle. So if we look in our order, it goes B second, A first, C third. So I match that up. That has to be congruent to angle YXZ. So this answer would have to be angle YXZ. And I'll mark that in my picture. YX right there to Z. So that angle right there. Okay, number 6, angle Z. There's angle Z. I'll put 2 arcs there. It's congruent to what angle? Well, if you notice, Z is the third in my order here, so it has to match up with C. So C and Z angles have to be the same. So this would be angle C. And the last one, angle B, is congruent to angle what? Well, angle B is right here, so I'll put 3 arcs in. And then B, if you notice, is the second letter in the order of my congruency statement, so it has to match up with angle Y. Okay, so angle B is congruent to angle Y. So that's how you would do numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The next problem that was assigned to you was number 10. Okay, so in number 10 it says, the instructions state, can you conclude that the figures are congruent? Justify your answer. So what you're doing is you're trying to conclude, is this statement a yes or no statement? So is triangle SRT, so is that triangle congruent to triangle PRQ, that triangle right there? Okay, well, how do we know if triangles are congruent? Remember, by definition of what we learned today in class, triangles are congruent when all sides and all angles are the same. So let's see what we know is the same for sure. So you can see that we know that angle T is 90 degrees and angle Q is 90 degrees. So those two angles are the same. Okay? And then there's no other marks at all indicating what's the same in each picture. So my question is, or the question you should ask yourself is there anything that we know has to be the same even though they're not marked as the same? And you should notice right here that that angle right there, angle TRS, has to be the same as angle QRP. Why do those two angles have to be the same? Well, that's because, remember, those are vertical angles. Okay? And then if these two angles are the same as each other, that means the third angle in each triangle has to be the same as well. So we know that even though they're not marked, those angle P has to be the same as angle S. Okay, so what do we know? So we know that all the angles are the same. Okay, however, we don't know anything about the sides, nor can we conclude anything. So your answer here would be no. I can't conclude that the figures are congruent. Okay, now how would you justify this? You would say because we don't know if all the sides are the same. Are the same. Okay? So this one would not be no. Remember, in order for two triangles to be congruent, all the angles have to be marked the same and all the sides have to be marked the same. Okay, flipping the page over. Your next problem is number 12. This says if triangle ABC is congruent to triangle JKL, which of the following must be correct? So we are looking for the correct congruence statement. So angle A congruent to angle L. So there's A, there's L. Notice they're not in the same place in my congruency statement, so that one can't be it. B, side AB, A and B are the first two letters in my statement on this side, is congruent to J and L, which are not the first two letters, so that cannot be correct. C, angle B is congruent to angle K. There's B, it's the second letter, K is the second letter, so C must be the correct congruent statement. And then this one right here, triangle BAC. Now notice what they did, they switched the order. So B first, A second, C third. Then this is saying B would match up with L. Well, does B match up with L? It doesn't. So you can see B has to match up with K. So that would not be correct as well. So C is the answer to number 12. Number 14, and number 14 says find the values of the variables. So we are told that triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle FED. Okay, and we want to find the values of the variables. Well, if you notice that this side right here is represented by 3x inches, this side right here is represented by 9 inches, that is side EF, which is the second and the first letter. That is side YX, which is the second and the first letter. So these two sides have to be the same according to this congruency statement. Okay, so we know that side FE is the same, or it's congruent to side YX. This statement tells us that. Well, FE is 3x. That's going to be equal to side yx, which is 9. So to solve for the variable, I would just divide each side by 3, and x would be equal to 3. Okay, there's also a y. If you notice that angle D right here is represented by 2y, so angle D, and angle D is going to be congruent to, if you notice here, D is the third letter, so it has to be congruent to angle Z. Okay, angle D is represented by 2y. Angle Z is represented by 30 degrees, so 2y is equal to 30. To solve for y, I would divide by 2, so y would be equal to 15. So that's how we would do number 14. Okay, the last two problems you were asked to do was 16 and 17. So in 16 and 17, the directions state triangle FGH is congruent to triangle QRS. Find the measures of the given angles or the lengths of the given sides. Okay, so we are told in this congruency statement what is congruent to each other. So you can see in number 16 it says the measure of angle F is equal to the statement or the expression x plus 24. So there's F right there, it's the first letter. And measure of angle Q, which is also the first letter, is equal to 3x. So what does that mean? That means that the measure of angle F has to be the same as the measure of angle Q, and I know that because of my congruency statement here. So angle F is represented by x plus 24. That's going to be equal to the measure of angle Q, which is represented by 3x. And I'm going to solve this problem for x. Okay, so I would subtract x from both sides of the equation. That would cancel out these x's. My new equation would be positive 24, and I just write 24. 3x minus x, that's like 1x, is equal to 2x. Then we would divide both sides by 2, so we know that x is equal to 12. So we would get 12 is equal to x. And you could read this as x equals 12. Now, let's see, did I answer what it asked me to find? It said find the measure of the given angles or lengths. Okay, so I haven't found the given angles. Okay, so I know what x is. So now I need to find angle F. Okay, well that's pretty easy. Angle F is equal to the expression x plus 24. We just found out that x was 12. So I substitute 12 in the place of 24. Angle F is equal to 36. There's one answer. Now I also need to find angle Q. So angle Q is represented by the expression 3 times x. Once again, x is 12, so angle Q, substituting 12 for x, I would get 3 times 12. So you can see that angle Q is also equal to 36. So really, those two answers are the answers we're looking for in number 16. Last one, number 17, side GH. So if you notice, GH is the second and the third letter in my congruency statement on the left. So we know that GH side is going to be equal to, and it's going to be equal to R and S. And you can see here that side RS is equal to x plus 6. So we know that GH is equal to RS. GH is represented by 3x minus 2. That's going to be equal to RS, which is represented by x plus 6. So this is my equation that I'm going to use to solve for x. Okay, I have 3 x's on the left, I have an x on the right, so I'm going to get rid of the smaller amount. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Those x's would cancel. 3x minus x gives me 2x minus 2 equals 6. Now I'm going to add 2 to both sides to eliminate these 2's here. That gives me the equation 2x is equal to 8. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2, so x is going to be equal to 4. Alright, now that's not the answer I'm looking for, because notice the instruction said find the measure of the given angles or lengths. So in this case I want to find the lengths. So I have to find out how long is side GH. Well, GH is represented by 3 times x minus 2, and I'm going to substitute 4 in the place of x. So 3 times 4 is 12, minus 2 is 10. So side GH is going to have a length of 10. That's one of the answers we were looking for. And now we also need to find side RS. RS is represented by the expression x plus 6. X is 4. So substituting 4 for x, I get rs is equal to 4 plus 6, which is also equal to 10. Okay, there you go. Unit 3, worksheet 1, in the books.